Hi, I'm Valerie Engelhart, and today, as you can see, I'm at a bit of a different viewing angle, and that is because I'm having to work on the floor for this piece. I am using a technique that I learned in a workshop I recently took by Nicholas Lopez as part of a workshop offered through the Northwest Watercolor Society. And workshops are great, but what good are they if you don't put what you learned to the test for your own kind of painting? I am using Lunar Black on Canson Heritage hot press paper. I'm working on the floor on one of my quilting cutting mats to try and protect my floor, and an old towel to catch all the drips. Because the key of this technique is to go in with really thick paint, get it wet, and then hold it at an angle patiently. The reason I'm doing this particular, I don't have anything sketched, which is normal for me, but I am being intentional with how and what direction I want these organic shapes to flow. So anyone who is on my Instagram knows that I am obsessed with the manga series The Summer Hikaru Died. And this is actually my third fan art piece, but the first one I'm showing to this channel. First piece was like a multimedia piece, second one was digital, but this one I am going in with loose, juicy watercolor. And the reason it works for this is, I guess, quick little synopsis. I'm going to be painting Yoshiki, who is one of the main characters. Hikaru is his best friend who one day goes into the mountains and something else comes back. It turns out that Hikaru's corpse is being puppeted by an eldritch god. And I don't mean like Cthulhu or anything. I mean truly incomprehensible to humans when I say eldritch. Like when you see his true form, you kind of go mad. That kind of eldritch, which is really cool to me. And so anytime that you see this being, it's this swirl of black and white in these organic forms that don't really make sense. It's both alien, but almost like you're looking at cells under a microscope. And it's just really cool. And I thought, oh, really nice organic patterns. Watercolor. And on this side, I've added a ton of water. Like, look at all of the water that is flowing off my paper. And then as I go in with an oil fan brush and just juicy Daniel Smith Lunar Black straight from the tube, going in with a spritzer bottle and heavy water droplets to get it flowing, because I want these to flow down from a central point, as if they are about to encase my character. And so I haven't sketched anything yet because I like to keep things loose in that I want to be able to anticipate and work with my wash as it goes, instead of trying to make a wash adhere to what I want it to be, because controlling water, it's best if you let it do its thing. And I know that I don't really have a great view of everything. I hope that you can see some of those really cool textures showing right there. This is my first time kind of bringing out a small tripod and trying to film while I'm on the floor, but here I am back on the table. And you can probably see my really light pencil marks. I actually do know how to draw. And since I'm drawing a person, I did want to kind of have a roadmap of where I was going. Especially because this is a very granulating pigment, it lifts pretty easily. So I didn't want to be going in over and over and lifting these beautiful marks. Now, I didn't want to do this all black and white because I do want to show that Yoshiki is human. And so I'm going in with a Zorn palette. And a Zorn palette usually uses Payne's Gray, but I'm using black in this case instead of Payne's Gray, as well as usually it's like vermilion. I'm using a cadmium red hue and then a yellow ochre. And those will typically give you a really good skin tone. And so to get green in this case, luckily I don't need green, but you would mix the yellow and the Payne's Gray, because Payne's Gray kind of has a little bit of a blue, just a touch, but I'm going black. And I like minimum limited palettes. So going in with only 3 colors really works for me in this case. And this is the first wash of Yoshiki, so I'm just keeping things really loose. I've wet his face to go into his hair. That way it's not so chop blocked. Like, I don't know, I don't want it to look, it's definitely a manga, and I'm sticking true to sort of a manga style. I'm not making him look like a realistic person, but I do want the forms to flow organically into each other. I don't want it to look like cut out pieces of paper. I'm using that same lunar black to do his hair. He has black hair, and that really works well for me because I do want to keep the color palette consistent. And everything right now is still pretty wet. Even though my wash is dry, everywhere where his features are going to be is wet because I'm at a stage where I want everything to be soft and diffused. All right, now that he's dry, I did sprinkle a little bit of water on there to give a little more texture to the hair. He has kind of these blue-gray eyes, but I've got so much gray going on that I've decided to try and make almost like a green gray using the yellow ochre and then introducing the black. I did make the iris a little bigger than I meant to, because in this point, he's being consumed by something resembling his friend, who is no longer resembling his friend and is terrified. I really did want to make the iris a little smaller and show more white of the eye, but because I'd already done it, trying to erase it was not going to work, so just go with the flow. I did leave a couple highlights where I left the white of the paper, as white as the paper was, and then used a damp, clean brush to lift a little bit of the pigment from the bottom of the iris to give the eye a little more shine. I painted in the eyebrow, just grabbed a paper towel and dabbed it. That way it had some texture and didn't look too stark. Now, right now it looks like I'm giving him some super emo eyeliner, but anyone who's watched any of my other videos knows I like to go in dark and then lift it off. And there I go, did it again. And then softening the line. And poor Yoshiki. He is kind of a gloomy character, even if he wasn't dealing with the insurmountable grief of losing his best friend from childhood and having to continue as if nothing terrible has happened. So he usually has like bags under his eyes and always has a very tired, almost haunted look about him. Now for shadows, I've got plenty of black in this painting. So in this case, anywhere that's a shadow, I want to go in with more red. I want to show the warmer skin tone. So just going in with my red, if I feel like the red needs to be darker, then I mix in a little bit of the black. And I keep falling for something here, and that is that red right now, it looks way too strong. And so then I bleed things away and soften it up. But I don't know if it's this watercolor in general, because watercolor does dry much paler than when it goes down, or if it's this paper in general. But I kept finding that this red mixture would dry much lighter and paler than when I put it down. Because like right now it looks like a super vibrant red, and I was like, oh, that's a little too red. But it really would dry to a much softer, more, dare I say, palatable red. I'll see myself out, but after I'm done recording. All right, got to give a little more dimension to his neck. That whole thing is not his face. We are going to have a bit of a jawline, and I kind of have to keep adjusting it because I did draw in a jawline, and then I was like, oh, I don't really like that. So you'll see me make adjustments, and honestly, by the end, it really does come together. Going in for the ear now, it's usually a good rule of thumb, but I guess maybe a good rule of ear. Go in with red. That's usually a good thing to do with skin tones, is really just to go in with red, a dark red, or even a brown, but I don't have a brown in this case, I have red. So I'm going in with a red mixed with the black, because the ear is in shadow. I do want to show that it is pushed back away from the face. So it is a cooler red, but I don't have a lot of other features going on because a lot of his face is covered. So I do want to do a good job with the few features that are showing. I've gone in with very thick pigment and a tiny liner brush to put in the pupil. Dotting around the iris a bit, And I don't know if you noticed, but the white of the eye, when I was painting earlier, I didn't avoid the white of the eye. I went ahead and painted over it with my first wash because eyes are in the skull. There's usually shadow there. They aren't super bright white. And so to let it, I don't want to say merge, but just go with the rest of the face, in the first wash, definitely paint over the entire eye. Now for his expression, the eye is very important, so I'm going to be spending a lot of time here. Going in, adding a line, softening a line, letting it dry, re-adding the line, softening the line, letting it dry. And the letting it dry part, that's the hardest part for watercolor and me. Though honestly, the few times I paint with acrylic, that's the hardest part too, is putting something down and needing to let it dry. All right, going in, attempt number, I don't know, maybe 2 for fixing that jawline. The ear has dried enough that I can go in with some of the line work. Typical Val, put in the lines, and then clean damp brush, soften them. All right, right now I'm doing some things with my brush where I'm deciding that I want to bring that organic mixture down a bit. So I'm going in with super juicy, dark, black pigment and trying to mimic some of those shapes so I can close off that gap at the bottom that I'm not really liking. So I put down the paint and I'm going to introduce some water from my brush and let it flow a bit because I do want to mimic what I got before. And while to a trained eye or somebody who knows what I did and is looking for it, it obviously is added after. But when you're looking at the composition as a whole, it still really works. And so that was a nice little save on my part. But I know I'm painting the eye right now, but look at those textures on the right side. Like, that is so much fun. I cannot wait to do that with maybe some other granulating colors and see what sort of effects I get. All right, more juicy black right now and a size 12 brush because I want to paint in his hair. And I want to think in values. So right now, the value of his hair is way too light. I am going to make, honestly, other than those little pits that are in the paper, the hair and the pupil are going to be the darkest values in this whole thing. So I'm going in with really thick paint and bringing his hair in. Introducing some water because I don't want it to be just one flat shape. I've got a whole lot of really cool textures going on, and I'd like to have some of that introduced into his hair as well. So I'm going in and just dropping in some water, tilting my paper so it flows, and getting some movement. Plus it adds a little bit of shine. There's another tip for you. Tilt your paper. Pick up your block, your paper, whatever it is, tilt it and get that water to move, even if you're already working on your subject and not just the wash, because you get really cool water effects. Ooh, looky here, back to that eye crease again. At this point, I've decided that the hair needs to blend more into the background, just because it was looking like, I don't like having too many found edges. And so I do want it to bleed into the background a bit at that upper section. So I'm just reactivating the paint with a wet brush and bleeding it into the background. But look, you can practically see the heavy pigment of the paint with the granules flowing off the side. But anyway, there's my finished painting. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and press that like button so I know to make more like this. And if you want to see more from me, I make videos every Monday and Thursday, so press that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Thanks so much for watching. See you later. Bye.